Common mistakes on the first date. The biggest one I see is that guys treat it like a job interview. They take themselves way too seriously, and their goal for the date is to prove themselves to her, prove why they're cool, and they try way too hard to impress her. They try way too hard to tell their life story to her. But often what you'll find is what scores you a first date in the first place, and even a second date, is that sense of mystery. The reason she's showing up to a date is because she doesn't know everything about you and she wants to know everything about you. But what actually builds a connection with people isn't them knowing your life story. Ironically, it's them feeling like they can open up to you. So if you can get her to open up to you, ask her the right types of questions, establish a 70-30 where 70% of the time she's talking and 30% of the time you're talking. And most of your talking is just listening to what she's saying and asking questions or teasing her based on what she's giving you. You're going to establish the right type of connection where she feels like, you know what? I feel like I really have a connection with Devin. I feel like he really understands me. That's the great irony, is we all have this desire within ourselves to feel understood, to feel heard. But if you can suppress that desire within yourself and fulfill it for her, she's gonna feel so happy, feel such a deep connection with you, feel like, Devin's different than all the other guys I've dated. I feel like I could really open up and be myself around him. But that doesn't come from you talking her ear off. It comes from you listening, actively understanding what she's saying and asking the right types of questions based on what she's saying. So that's what I think the biggest common mistake is, guys feeling like a job interview where they have to prove themselves. But the biggest irony is what's going to score you a great first date and a second date down the line is her feeling like she could open up to you, but she still feels that mystery and thirst of I feel like I didn't get to know Devin enough though. I want to go on a second date and actually get to know him a little bit more. That's the most common way to fix your first date mistake. Get her to open up.
Boom. Yeah, and then again, it goes back to that framing, right? Where it's just okay, you know what? I don't necessarily have to tell her. I listen so well. I understand her so well. It's the proof is in the pudding, right? I'm sitting back, listening to what she's saying and actually genuinely listening, right? I don't want to throw all my cards on the table. I don't want to tell her my whole life story, give her my whole autobiography on the first date, right? I want to have some mystery, some intrigue. It's if you're going to go see a movie, if you're going to go to the movies, right? And you watch an overindulgent trailer where it's a 6-minute long trailer, you see the whole trailer and you're like, okay, well, the ending of the movie's spoiled. I already know everything about the movie. Why would I go see the movie, right? Leave some mystery, some intrigue. What are some signs that a girl is interested in you on the first date? Some signs that she displays where it's okay, I can kind of sit back, coast, and I kind of know it's in the bag. Some telltale signs where it's on.
Yeah, I would say the big thing is responding to physical touch. And I'm not saying jump right in there and just start trying to make out with her on the date, but it's the little things, right? When you first meet her, give her a hug. It's a date. It's not a platonic hangout, right?
Job interview, right?
Yeah, it's not a job interview. It's a date. So when you first meet her, give her a hug, tell her she looks beautiful, find something in her outfit that says damn, those shoes are crazy. They'd give Billie Eilish a run for her money.
Love that.
A little bit of a stutter. We can edit that a little bit.
Oh yeah, we'll fix it all in post.
Those would give Billie Eilish a run for her money, right?
Yeah.
Now, and then another thing is when you're opening a door for her, put your hand on her lower back, be oh yeah, here you go, after you, right? If she's responding well to those little physical touches, it's a good sign, right? But if she's squirming and acting weirded out when you're making just the smallest physical escalations, it's a big red flag. It's a sign that she's just not into you in a romantic or sexual way. It is a sign that you got to fix your approach. It's probably something you said or some behavior that you demonstrated really turned her off. So what I'd say is this is a common mistake a lot of guys do is they wait until the very end of the date to touch physically at all. They go for that Hail Mary kiss at the end of the night, hoping I hope she likes me. I'm going to find out by going for a kiss. And you're setting yourself up for either a brutal humiliation, the most awkward moment of your night, or B, a great first kiss, but it's too late to pull the trigger and escalate even more than that. So that's what I'd say is what you need to do on the date is the right balance of complimenting, teasing, flirting, normal conversation, and introducing small physical touches throughout the date and seeing how she's responding, right? When you're teasing her, is she blushing a little bit? Is she trying to prove herself to you a little bit? Are you building tension? Is she responding to that? Or is she just shit testing you the entire date, right? Is she's just being super bratty and trying to deny any advances you have flirting, sexually, whatever. If that's the case, those are some red flags that she's not interested. But you asked what are the signs of interest, right? When you're flirting with her, when you're teasing her, she's blushing a little bit. She's trying to prove herself to you a little bit. I think the biggest signs of interest on a date are she's responding well to physical touch, right? She's not squirming up and getting tense, but in fact, she finds relief in your physical touch. When you go in for like a hug, maybe you take her to a place with a nice view, kind of like this, and you put your arm around her. Is she like squirming and going away, or is she leaning her head into your shoulder, right? Those are all really good signs. And when you get those signs, it's good to pick up on them, read them, and escalate even further, right? Like, if you're putting your arm around her, she's leaning on your shoulder, probably a good time to go for a kiss, right? You're getting good signs there. So it's not only about reading the signs and finding out, like, are these good signs, but it's acting on them too. You have to shoot your shot on the date.
Right. And then, okay, tell me, okay, I'm going to try to sum this up just so, the guys can take some great value from this video, because, man, you have dropped some gems in this. You are on a roll. I would say the first thing is to lead, right? Lead the date, have a general game plan of what you're going to do, where you're going to go, take the reins, and also instead of thinking me, think you, okay? Instead of thinking, okay, am I good enough for this girl? Because those thoughts will get you in your own head, and meanwhile you're not going to be present. So try to be as present as possible. Observe the girl's body language. Think, okay, how is she responding to me? Try to escalate as quickly as possible with the hug. You're already establishing it's not a job interview. It's not like, two friends meeting up for cocktails, right? Like, you're here and you're already establishing that flirty vibe. And then another thing you touched on, which was great too, and I say this and a lot of guys look at me like I have 3 heads, but I'll say that don't ever go for the kiss at the end of the date, because the way I see it is a lot of guys, they don't, like you said, escalate properly, right? And the thing that you guys have to understand is, guys, they're like switches. Boom, they're ready to rock. They can wake up and just start like humping their mattress. They're horny, ready to rock. Whereas girls are like a dial, right? You have to kind of, even if they're, 10 out of 10 interested in you, you still have to kind of warm them up, right? You still have to progressively, make steps to be flirty, to lead up to that kiss. It's not like, okay, you're just talking about the weather, you're talking about, what you do for work, and then at the end of the date, it's like, right? Yeah. So it's like, progress towards that, and then, when you see she has those anime eyes, she's into you, then you'll know. It's like, okay, shooting for the kill. Now, with that being said, any final thoughts or anything to add?
Women have so many options. They can post one story on Instagram and have 30 offers for dinner that night. So if she shows up to a date with you, takes 2 or 3 hours to get ready, do her makeup, and doesn't flake, and actually shows up on a date with you, that means she's insanely interested. For women to show up on a date with you means they're probably more interested in you than you are in them.
I like that.
You might be nervous for your first date, but she's just as nervous as you are, if not more nervous. Because for women to go on a date, it means they're rejecting all of the other options they have, and they're selecting you.
Wow.
So with that in mind, there's no reason to be nervous for a date, because you know that she's more interested in you than you are in her, and she's more nervous for the date than you are. And that might be hard to believe, but think about that. Women have so many options. If they're going on a date with you, it means that you really matter to them. So go into that date with confidence. You're the fucking top dog in her life. You're the guy that she wants to see over every other guy. Have that mental advantage in your head and go into your date with confidence. There's no reason to be nervous on a date. In fact, you can kind of sit back, relax, chill, and just use it as an opportunity to get to know her. Qualify her. See if she's worthy of being in your life. And if you can take that mindset and pivot from what 99% of guys are doing on dates, you're gonna have the most abundant dating life you could possibly dream of.
What are ideal, perfect logistics that guys want to consider? And what are some things that a lot of guys get wrong when it comes to logistics and anchoring like a pull?
Yeah, logistics, intentions, and interest, I think are the big 3 when it comes to getting a girl to come over to your place. And whether it's hooking up or just hanging out at your place, it has to make sense to her, right? So what a lot of guys get wrong is her interests. They pick an anchor, like something at their house that she just has no interest in, right? Like, hey, want to come back to my place and watch Dragon Ball Z? Want to come back to my place and watch Ben Shapiro compilation, right? Like, she just has no interest in that shit, right? So anchoring is one of the most important things that you can do when it comes to actually getting a girl to come back to your place.
So I just doing a mic check real quick.
Yeah, quick mic check.
Technical difference. Okay, no, we're good. Okay. So
what I mean by anchoring is like, pick an activity or a topic, or ideally like a cool thing that's at your place where it would just naturally make sense for her to be like, oh yeah, I definitely want to check that out. It makes sense to go to your place, right? I think when it comes to getting girls to come over to your place, it just has to make sense to them. Logistically, you know, is your place super far away? Does she have to take a 40-minute Uber and then in the morning take a 2-hour Uber back to her place, right? Logistics are a big factor. But assuming you have good logistics and you figured out like, okay, my place is close enough to the bar I'm at, or I've picked a date to bring her to that's close enough to my place, step number 2 is finding that anchor. You have to find an activity at your place that is more lit or interesting to her than the activity you're currently doing. So for example, we're at Pride Parade right now, right? 30,000 people on the street, free alcohol, dancing, entertainment, limitless options as far as things to do. How the hell are you going to pull a girl back to your place? Well, luckily today, we've got the best logistics in town. We live at the start of the Pride Parade, okay? We've got a condo that overlooks the skyline of Toronto, overlooks the parade, and that's our anchor, right? What's more lit than being in the thick of it with the people in the parade? We have a $100 bottle of tequila and a rooftop that overlooks the Toronto skyline and the Pride Parade. That's the type of anchor that you would need on a day like today, where the stakes are this high, to actually pull.
I love it. And the thing is, we were talking off camera about this, but there is a lot of sales tactics, you know, that come into this, right? That come into play when it comes to pulling girls, right? It's like the whole make them an offer that they can't refuse, right? It's like everything, you know, is in our favor, and we stack those odds purposely, intentionally, right? And I find what a lot of guys do, and this is the mindset when it comes to approaching girls, right? They have this mindset where it's like, okay, let me see what I can do to qualify to the girl. I'm going to try to win her over. When it's like, you know, it actually goes back to what you were saying, right? From the initial approach, guys are in this mindset. But if you actually try to stay present and think, okay, I'm going to get to know the person in front of me. I'm going to get to know the girl in front of me. What is she like? What are her interests? And going back to your point about the Dragon Ball Z, right? It literally makes no sense where it's just like, okay, a girl never mentioned she likes Dragon Ball Z. I can understand if, you know, she did mention that, but it's like, okay, get to know her interests and make her, you know, essentially an offer that she can't refuse, right?
100%. And you don't want to be too needy too, right? Like when it comes to sales and dating, there is a lot of overlap, like you said, Devin. And I think one of the biggest things is not being too needy. In the sales world, a lot of salespeople will talk about something called sales breath. When you need your commission so bad, you're so desperate that people can smell your sales breath from a mile away. They know you're pitching them you're like, you think you're planting seeds, but you just come off as very salesy, right? And in the dating world, it comes the same thing. Like if you're trying to bring a girl back to your place, if you're too needy, she can fucking intuitively tell that you want it too much. So instead, if you can frame yourself the right way where you have abundance, let's just say you clap cheeks 3 hours before your date, right? You have no desire to clap cheeks again, unless you're, you know, as horny as Devin is. So if you can frame yourself, frame yourself in that way, right? Like instead of saying, hey, I have the coolest balcony, it overlooks the parade, I would love to, you know, I know the parade's fun, but like we should go check it out. You know, if you really want to, we could do it. Like, instead of being needy, right? Come across as, you know, if you're lucky, I might bring you to my rooftop balcony that overlooks the parade. And, you know, I've actually been collecting a nice assortment of tequilas, and I usually reserve them for people I really, really like. So, you know, if you play your cards right, maybe we can, you know, break into that collection a little bit. Think about the difference in frame there, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I've heard you talk about this before where it's like in every interaction there's a buyer's frame and there's a seller's frame, right? A lot of guys, they're in the selling frame too often, right? Where it's just like, oh, well, please, you know, if you're not doing anything, you know, I'm a really cool guy. They're trying to prove themselves. When in reality, it's like, you know, the optimal strategy is try to get the girl to qualify to you. Me and you have a very similar strategy, you know, and one of my go-tos is, well, you seem normal enough. You know, you don't seem too crazy. How about this, right? And then I'll propose something, right? And then I'll be kind of like, you know, portraying in my body language like I'm still kind of, you know, trying to make up my mind about that girl, right? As opposed to like trying to sell myself too hard. So with that being said, do you have like a go-to kind of pulling, I guess, line or something that you usually say to girls, or just kind of like just depending on the girl?
Yeah, it totally depends on the girl. So if I'm on the date and it's going well, like let's say we're kissing already, a lot of physical contact, good eye contact, she's laughing at my jokes, blushing a lot when I'm really flirty with her, I'll literally just say at the end of the activity, whether it's like drinks, grabbing dessert, whatever, it's like, hey, you want to get out of here? And if it's a yes, it's like almost implied that we're going back to my place, right? Now, if things are a little more complicated, we're taking things kind of slow. Another way that I would kind of frame that is, look, we could sit here all night. Maybe we sit here for another couple hours, drown ourselves in even more chocolate cake, you know, get fat, weigh 300 pounds by the end of the night. Or we could come back to my place. My rooftop balcony's still open. Maybe you don't have a rooftop balcony, right? But you might have another anchor. You know, I have that hammock in my place, and you know, I usually reserve it for very special people. But I feel okay about you. You know, maybe we can get out of here, and I might let you check it out. But you can only sit on it for 30 seconds, right? It's all about how you frame things, and having that buyer frame is so important. Like what I'll say, Devin, is scarcity creates value. People want what they can't have. People want what's not readily available and super accessible to them. Now, they don't want something that's completely unattainable and unrealistic, but what they want is, and this is just basic psychology, men and women, we all want what's slightly within reach, but we have to extend ourselves a little bit to go and grab it, right? That dangling carrot that we have to go and fucking get. That's what we all crave. If you can become the dangling carrot for women, you're gonna get more action than you could possibly handle.
Wow. That right there is probably the quote of the video. I love it. And it's just that mindset, right? That framing, you know, how you're framing the interaction.
Yeah.
Right? So
what's your go-to way to pull back to the crib?
So what I like to do is I like to try to sell it in terms of like a TV show or a movie, right? So I do something that's a little different than some guys, right? So I'll talk about, you know, TV shows and movies, and then I'll name one that, you know, I know that the girl hasn't heard of, right? I'll name a movie that's kind of, you know, within her taste. If she says, and what I find is a lot of girls love thrillers, right? They love, you know, the murder mysteries. So I'll say, oh, have you seen, you know, X thriller, X, you know, TV show? And I know she hasn't seen it because it's like, you know, an independent or whatever, right? And I'll kind of like make her feel, really? You haven't seen that? Wow, you're really missing. What, have you been living under a rock? Like, no, I haven't actually. So I'll make reference to that, and then that'll be like the first kind of, you know, mention of it, right? So I'm what they call seeding the pull, right? Yeah. So I'll say that, and then, you know, I'll get talking about TV shows and movies again. Oh, so wait, so you haven't seen this show? So I was going to tell you about this show, but I don't know. You know, you seem like you don't watch too much TV, and I try to make her almost, I guess, feel bad that she hasn't seen it. And then I say, like, okay, you know what? And I do the crazy line, right? Like, okay, you know what? Like, you seem pretty normal. You don't seem crazy, or you don't seem too crazy. How about we, and here I'm just throwing shit out there, right? How about we go and watch this show? I have this at my place, right? In terms of, you know, drinks, but it's still like the same kind of mindset, and it's obviously not with the same girl. It's not like the same copy and paste approach. You know, some girls are different, but that's kind of a go-to I have in my pocket.
Good one.
But I like to, you know, improv and improvise, you know, just based on the girl that's, you know, sitting in front of me, right? So it all comes from that same mindset, right? Where it's just like, okay, let me try to, you know, get her to qualify to me, right? But yeah.
It's smart, bro, because what you're doing, Devin, is you're talking about how you're preparing yourself for that close, right? And in the sales world, it's the same thing. Everyone wants to look at like best closing techniques, best way to fucking get a deal signed, whatever it is. But let's be honest. If the date goes well, if your sales call goes well, you could kind of say fucking anything and pull either the deal or, you know, pull her back to your place, whatever it is. And that's why it's so intelligent what you're saying is you're setting yourself up for success earlier on in the date. I think what will get the clickbait is the instant gratification of like best way to pull a girl back to your place. But let's be real, the best way to pull a girl back to your place is to frame your date with her in the right way, take her on the right type of date, make sure that on the date you have the right balance of flirting, teasing, normalcy, you're building interest, you're building tension, you're establishing physical touch. Ideally, you're breaking that touch barrier early on, getting a kiss on the date so you're not waiting on a Hail Mary kiss at the end of the night. Like, there's so many things that you can do to set yourself up for success, where at the end of the day, you could literally say, hey, want to come back to my place and maybe if you're lucky, clap cheeks all night? If you set yourself up the right way, you could say fucking anything at the end of the night and get her back to your place.
Yeah, and it's just a mindset, right? You know, a lot of guys go into the date and they're thinking to themselves, okay, you know what, I'm so lucky to be on this date to this girl, let me just try to prove myself, right? When it should be the reverse. It should be like, okay, you know what, I'm on this date with this girl, let me see if I like her, let me see if we get along, right? So it's just with that mindset that you start to ask her questions, get her to open